Welcome one and all to Swiss. I'm here at Magnet Motors this morning reviewing the Zero FXE. It's the baby brother to the S. We do know that baby brothers don't always match up to the larger brothers, but what the heck. This is a 7.2 kilowatt hour battery bike, so it has half the battery capacity of the S, but it has more or less the same motor, so it's an 11 kilowatt motor. However, it produces not 15 brake horsepower as peak, but 44 brake horsepower as peak. Now that's some way down on the S's 59, but ultimately it's still pretty good for a CBT or A1 legal bike. So let's take a look at the bike in a little bit more detail. So the bike comes with an LED headlight, comes with J1 brakes, front and rear disc brakes, has a lovely TFT screen that gives you all the information that you need to know. The error code down there, the error 45, that's because the kickstand's down. So this bike's been fitted with Oxford heated grips. It's got an aftermarket Zero screen on it and the hand protectors as well. So the rear lights are LED as well. This, for the Givey top box, is an aftermarket accessory option that comes from Zero. So it is a sort of specifically fitted for the Zero. But overall, tidy looking bike. Can't wait to get on it.
Okay, here we go. Oh, much lighter than the S. Whoa, that is wasn't expecting it to be quite wasn't expecting it to be quite as light in comparison to the S, but interesting. It's feels a much shorter bike. I don't suspect it is particularly that much shorter, but oh, we're in sport mode. I'm going to take it out of sport mode. Okay, and here we go. Cancel the indicators. No cancelling indicator. Wouldn't have expected that. Don't get one on the S. It's got brand new brakes on it. You can tell they really bite quickly. Some may say that's confidence inspiring. I'd say it's a little bit jerky, but adjust the mirrors so I can see what's going on behind me. It's a really nice riding position. Initial impressions, really nice riding position. Quite upright, but for me that's good. The S, you're leaning forwards an awful long way in comparison. So, oh, there's nothing on the back brake. Now that, I suspect, is because the custom setting isn't anywhere near as firm with the regenerative braking. There's very little feel to that back brake. It doesn't have any bite at all, really. Now, if I were using this for commuting, I'd absolutely be loving this light steering and manoeuvrability. Much more manoeuvrable than the S. Much more manoeuvrable. Leans in very quickly. Dreadful road surface. Let's close that down. Right. Open it up. Here we go. Behind, adjust the mirrors, put it into sport mode, see what it does. So 40, let's get down to 40 and go. Yeah, it's got good pull. I mean, amazing pull for a little CBT legal 125 equivalent. Would I say that pull is equal to the S? No. I know people say this is as fast, if not faster than the S, but I'm not absolutely convinced with that. Put it in eco. So we're in eco mode. I'm going to pull away. Now, funnily enough, that is quite interesting. In eco mode, I reckon that's much, much faster than the S. Much faster in the eco mode. That really surprised me. That really surprised me. That is quick. I suspect that's due to the fact that the eco mode has the same available torque and power as the S, but it weighs significantly less. So this weighs 135 kilos. The S weighs 180 kilos. So that's a big difference in weight. 50 kilos almost. 45 kilos. That's having another sort of half of me sitting on the bike. And let's face it, I'm not the lightest person in the world. So this is really interesting. I'm genuinely surprised. Given that it's the baby brother to my bike, I was rather sort of expecting it to be a little bit disappointing, a little bit underwhelming, but it's not at all. If this is the sort of bike you like a oh, they're Lambrettas, Vespas rather, I should say. If you're in the market for a supermoto, I mean, this is extraordinary. Now that was a surprise. It was a genuine surprise, coming to almost a standstill, that I could keep the bike upright much more easily than I could the S at very, very slow speeds. I mean, that was showing 1 mile an hour. I wouldn't be able to get the S down to 1 mile an hour without it leaning to one side or the other. I was expecting that to be totally the opposite, that having a high centre of gravity, that it wouldn't be so stable at low speeds. Does it feel as planted as the S on the open road at 50 miles an hour? No. The S feels very planted. However, on the flip side, this has a much more compliant suspension. With the S, it's very firm. This isn't so firm. And yeah, really enjoying it. Really enjoying it. Does it make me want to push on like the S does? No. Well, maybe it does actually. I mean, we're doing just over 50. Now let's talk about the range on this thing, because the range is supposedly a maximum of 100 miles around town. Because you get regenerative braking on these bikes, it's better in the city, the range, and worse when you're out on the open road. talks about a combined range of somewhere in the region of about 60 miles and highway speeds of about 50. Oh blimey, that's a long way down. I'd be fairly sceptical of that. I'd be fairly sceptical of the range of 100 miles. I don't think you're going to get 100 miles worth of range out of it in town. With my bike, real world range in town is between 160 and 180 miles, and that has twice the battery. Now it's much heavier than this bike.
Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will probably have noticed that I've got an Insta360 camera on this bike, but there's no footage from it. And that's because it was the first time using it and I hadn't switched it on properly for some reason. So it wasn't until we got to Newlands Corner I realised this, turned it on the return journey. So you'll certainly get some better footage on the way back from the Insta than you will have done from my helmet camera. As always, when I was up there was a lot of interest from some of the bikers to find out more about the electric bikes, what their performance is, what their range is, the usual questions. It's quite interesting that when I first started going to places like Box Hill and Newlands Corner, I was expecting people to be quite anti-electric bikes, but there genuinely is. There's a lot of interest as to what the bikes are like to ride. Are they just like normal bikes? What's their performance, etc. And a lot of interest.
So let's hit the road again and carry on the review. Now the first thing I'd like to mention is I'm not being paid for this review. I'm not being paid either by Magnet Motors or Zero Motorbikes. As a result, I can be honest, I can say what I want about the bike, but quite frankly, there's very little to say about this bike that isn't hugely positive. Let's start with the build quality. I think that's absolutely spot on. Performance-wise, well, that's long been a backbone of Zero's selling point, and this bike's no different to that. In sport mode, it's absolutely fantastic. Did I find it quite as impressive as my Zero S? Probably not. But the real revelation of this bike was how fast it is in eco mode. I reckon it gives about sort of 65-70% of the sport mode, but with the added power to the rear brake from the regenerative braking. Genuinely, I'd be happy riding this bike in eco mode all day long. It really makes the custom mode superfluous in my opinion. On my S, I have to ride the bike in custom mode. I have it with 75% torque and 100% of the regenerative braking. Why? Well, because eco mode is absolutely anemic on the S. In sport mode, it doesn't give you enough braking power. It requires the regenerative braking to actually give you enough braking power to make it so that you can actually feel the back brake coming in. The ride is absolutely brilliant. It is so much better than the S's ride, as is the riding position. The flip side to this is you don't get quite so much confidence through the corners when you're pressing on. It just doesn't feel quite as good or as planted. So it's a better commuting bike than the S, is it? Yes, and then again, no. And why I say that is it's got a 7.2 kilowatt battery. This means you're likely to get about 70 miles of range out of it. You might get a bit more, but for me, that's not far enough because my commute is 50 miles as a round trip, and it would mean charging it every day. But if you've got a shorter commute of, say, 20-30 miles as a round trip, this is a perfect commuting bike. So coming back to my comment about little brothers not achieving the success of their older siblings, I'd say this FXE model is every bit as good as the S, and in many ways exceeds how good the S is. If my commute was shorter, would I be considering this as a bike? Absolutely, I'd consider having one of these as my everyday bike. So what are the downsides to the FXE? Well, firstly, it's the same as the 0S that is due to be replaced in January 24, and that's its lack of traction control. And why I think this is a vitally important thing just to point out is that when you put this wee beastie into sport mode, in the wet, you can easily part traction with the road surface. It's the same as the S. You have so much torque available and no traction control. But, you know, if that doesn't bother you, or you're not using it to its full potential, or you're just being a little bit more economical with the throttle, then absolutely it's a brilliant bike. Can I think about anything else that I don't like about the FXE? No, not really. It's a fabulous all-round bike, and if you could live with that battery range, I'd recommend you look at getting one. No, they're not cheap, but don't think of it that you're buying just a 125 equivalent. It's way better than that. Its performance, it's much more like a 400cc supermoto. And you can ride it on a CBT or A1 license. So you're not having to upgrade the bike once you've passed your test. But don't just take my word for it. Why don't you look up your local Zero dealer and go and take one for a test ride? Honestly, you'll love it. Drop all your preconceptions about having to have a petrol bike, because genuinely this is a brilliant bike. I'm blown away with how good it is. And, you know, I was coming here expecting it to be a little bit of a disappointment. It isn't at all. It's absolutely fabulous.
A big thank you to Ivan Don at Magnet Motos for letting me take the bike out for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Really enjoyed the ride. So even if you're a little e-curious, treat yourself. Take one for a test ride. Go on, you know you want to. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.